Hi, and welcome to another episode of The Innovation Conversation. Today we are joined by Rachel Murphy. Rachel, welcome to the podcast.
Hey Ricardo, delighted to
Pleasure having you here, Rachel. Would you like to introduce yourself to the audience, please?
love to. So my name is Rachel. I am currently founder of a company called the Grafter. Twice exited founder. Previous businesses were both in and around healthcare and consultancy.
And how did you get started? Because it's a very long journey. I know you've done quite a lot of stuff. You're kind of underplaying it now, but I know you have a brilliant history to share with the audience. So would you like to tell us a bit more, please?
Yeah, of course. So I started. I guess I started my career as an interim. So I'd never worked permanently for anybody until I built a company myself, and my my motivation really was about getting as many skills as possible from a consulting perspective, and so I ended up running various programs initially, and then entire kind of business units, and then businesses. So I've worked across public and private sector, worked for most of the big five, and my career started probably more on the private sector. Done a fair bit in telecoms, IT resellers, managed service companies, and then I did my first CIO role in local government many years ago now, about 15 years ago, and I totally sort of fell in love with transforming business units, and that got bigger and became businesses. Really ended up doing was CIO for Department for Education, ran the services business for Kier, the construction company, ran the services business for CDW, who are an international IT services outfit. And then went in and led the patient-facing transformation of the NHS. So built the NHS app and totally fell in love with healthcare.
So it's been on quite a journey, and you've done quite a lot of important things. I mean, the NHS app is huge. Everyone's kind of using it. I use it all the time, to be honest. So it's transformative. How many things you can
Yeah,
achieve.
it's interesting, Ricardo, because I think there's plenty of programs of work in government that talk a good game about transformation. There's few that are legitimately transforming of services. I was reading a YouGov poll the other day, and the NHS app is in the top 20 apps, across the UK that are used, which is pretty massive when you think about it, because you've got things like WhatsApp on there, Deliveroo, so you've got everything on there. But yes, I mean we've got 40 million people using the app.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing what you've done. And then, right now I know you're doing your own thing. So how is that transition from working for the government, but then transitioning to actually running your own business, exiting your own business as well? How did that happen?
So I built and sold my first business in my early 20s, and that was definitely more luck than judgment, and then kind of went back and was consulting again for years. After I built the NHS app, nhs.uk, I was pretty adamant that a lot of the companies that were building services were doing a reasonable job, but not a great job for the health service. And so I built different, and the rationale there was I wanted user-centered design to sit at the heart of what we were doing. And so I built that company and sold it within a 5-year period. And then, having gone through the process of building and selling a couple of companies, I wanted to help other entrepreneurs to do that. And that's really what led me to building the Grafter. And we're now helping founders to grow, scale, and exit in some cases. And unsurprisingly, lots of those founders are in professional services and healthcare.
Now, I mean, you've learned quite a lot of lessons. What are the common pitfalls you see the entrepreneurs making as mistakes? What are the common mistakes you kind of see them doing over and over again that you just want to tell them, just stop doing this because I've seen it all before?
So good question. I think there's probably a couple. I think that I've spoken to lots of entrepreneurs who've taken investment and wished that they hadn't. And so I think there's, I'm a bootstrap founder. So for me, I've not personally been on that journey. I've helped others raise, but I haven't been on that journey. But some of the conversations, some of the stories around having somebody breathing down your neck, unrealistic expectations. And I think, when you're a founder, the blood, sweat and tears that you put in when somebody else holds a lot of the equity in the business, I'm not sure about the balance on equity there. And so I see that more recently. I think that, if you're building a business and you're bootstrapping it, you have to be able to sell those services and deliver. In my opinion, that means you're actually building and running a business properly and getting experience of doing that. I guess the other bit that I see quite a lot is unrealistic timescales around doing things. So some people think it's going to be a lot faster than it actually is, and I think this is probably inherent in, how we kind of operate as a world. Everything is instant. We are the on-demand generation, and so people will watch some influencers on TikTok or Insta and think, I'm going to be building a business next in half an hour. And I think that drives some unrealistic demands. If I was more experienced, I probably wouldn't have attempted to go in and out in 5 years with the last business. So that was already a massively condensed timeline. So I think they're probably the key bits that spring to mind.
Do you think there are some unrealistic expectations coming in from investors as well? Instead of just advising the founder saying, "Hey, take your time, build correctly, build well," they actually say, "We need to do this for tomorrow or for yesterday in this case, and everything needs to be perfect because that's just the way business is done." I think that happens a lot.
I do think there's probably a fair bit of that, especially in certain industries that are kind of hot, like AI, and everybody is doing something with AI. And if you're not, the perception is you should be, or you're getting left behind. Yep. I think the reality is that's a lot of that will be machine learning at best, and probably not true AI. That's a conversation for another day. I think that. I think that there is a real drive around getting stuff built and shipped, and therefore generating cash rapidly. But if you drive people that hard and they cut corners, here's the news: when that product goes to market, there are going to be problems with the service that you think you're delivering. And as we all know, Ricardo, that's the fastest way to piss off your clients and not manage to retain them longer term. And so I think it's some of the building blocks around planning. And I say that because it's not my natural default. I would rather get going. I said before, strategy kind of, I understand the need for it, but I'm a doer. I'm a delivery girl. But I do think planning and thinking some of that stuff through and pushing back on people, whether that's investors, around expectations. Because otherwise, all you're going to do is disappoint them, and by definition, disappoint yourself in the process.
Would you, when you're building businesses and you've built many, do you normally do it with a team or you go about it yourself?
So I really like having a team around me, and I really like the difference of opinions around how we get things done. I guess as a founder this time, I own the business 100% myself. At some point, we will make equity available for those who have helped. Probably options have helped in this. I have had experience of working with business partners and this time without. I guess there's, if you've got a good team and they're going to challenge, we had the infamous line in a retrospective yesterday around being, the highest paid person's opinion, and an ask that I didn't comment first. The irony is my team are completely uninterested in my view a lot of the time and will challenge me as hard as as anybody else. So I think there's pros and cons. For me, last time round, I wanted a business partner. I didn't feel I could do it myself. This time, I absolutely do not feel the same way. I'm very comfortable doing it myself, but I really like collaborating. I love working with other entrepreneurs and I love working with a team, because it is a diversity of opinions and challenge. And I think, sometimes founders, I don't know, they kind of, they believe their own hype a little. And, we don't get it right a lot of the time. In fact, we get it wrong loads. And so having that challenge is important. I like that challenge from everybody in the business. I'm not interested in hierarchy. I want everybody to be able to say, that is a shocking idea, Rach. Let's not bother with that. So.
And how do you keep yourself, I guess, grounded and keep your ego in check when you're building up?
That's a good question, Ricardo, and a hard one. We should ask my wife the answer to that. She may say she doesn't, actually. Jokes aside, that is a really hard question. I'm pretty experienced with what I've done, but I don't think for 1 minute that I have all the answers. This market and this world is moving really quick. And so, I'm 46. From an age perspective, there are lots of people around me who are tapped into social media in a way that I probably will never be now. So, platforms like TikTok I don't use at all. I suspect at some point I'm going to have to, but I don't, and I'm resisting it. But I think the highs and lows of running a business are a really good check for ego, because we get so many things wrong. And anybody who's saying they don't, I think, is a bit of a fantasist or bloody lucky. But the reality is, it's a roller coaster of emotion, and I have times where I think, Jesus, why am I doing this again? And then I have times, most of the time, where I thoroughly enjoy it. I kind of relish the challenge. I love the learning. But I guess I've got a pretty good understanding of me, is the honest answer, Ricardo, these days. I've done a lot of work on me, had loads of therapy over the years. I'm very open about the fact I'm in a 12-step fellowship. I'm 10 years sober. So I guess 46-year-old me just knows me better. If I had the confidence at 20 that I have now, I'd have been very dangerous.
And I know a lot of people are listening into this. They're just starting out their entrepreneurial journey, and they're facing a lot of problems, right? And they're facing a lot of those very dark moments. So, what advice would 46-year-old Rachel give to the 20-year-olds listening to this? What would you tell them?
I would tell them. I would tell them the same thing I tell myself a lot of the time, which is a bad day running a startup is much better for me personally than working for anybody else any day of the week. I am not great to manage because I am very ADHD, and I'm very happy to get it right or wrong, providing I don't have somebody on my case. I've never been great with authority. And so for me personally, that's how I manage me. And what I would say is it's important that whatever you're doing is really lighting you up. So does it really fulfill something in you? There's a lot of people I think that would do something because it generated a lot of cash, and that may well be what motivates. We all have different motivations, but I think for me, if what you're doing is that kind of tied to your North Star as a person, the impact you want to make in the world, and it's something you deeply believe in, then that will see you through some pretty horrific times. And get a community, get a network of other founders, entrepreneurs, who are at varying stages, who you can pick up the phone to, or WhatsApp, or voice note, or DM and just go, Jesus, I'm having a mare. I was chatting to a lady I met at an event, maybe 6 weeks ago, Femtech event, one of the best events I've attended actually. It's called Cis Global, and I was chatting to her last night, and she's super early stage. She is going to raise $500,000. She's then going to launch, and she has such a powerful plan for what this business is going to look like in 12 months. And her energy is infectious. And I think it's about, she deeply believes in what she's going to go and do. So you've got to want it, because a lot of it is not going to be glamorous, and it's hard work. And so my advice is get that community, strap in. There is no substitute for hard work. I'm yet to meet anyone who does this bloody 4-hour day and makes a rip-roaring success of stuff. And maybe they're out there. Please, drop me a line. Let me know where I'm going wrong. But I think if you deeply believe and you want to make a difference, and it kind of really lights you up, then you're onto a good thing. But it's a roller coaster. It's massively up and down. And emotionally, I find that easier to deal with now than I would have done 20 years ago.
I'm always curious about one thing. I know you have a published book, and one of my passions is actually reading biographies of successful people. Who inspires you? Right? Who's that person on the back of your mind saying, "Ooh, they've done all this, so," and I think I can also do the same. So, who's that person?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, I probably an unusual response actually, but I'm going to give this one a go. So my stepdaughter got very sick with meningitis when she was 14. She's a triple amputee as a result, and has had a couple of kidney transplants. And I think watching Charlotte go on that journey over the last 16 years blows my mind. Her resilience and her ability to get up and carry on, with unbelievable amount of kind of personal medical drama. So I think from a personal perspective, Charlotte is a massive motivation. And if we're talking about like business people, I met one of my absolute heroes for the first time in person last week, and that's Stephen Bartlett. And the reason I like Stephen so much is, I think he has like the dream job, because he gets to interview super bright people and learn all day. And he was fantastic. He was great on the stage, very authentic, super smart, very fast brain. I'm quite a fan of him. And I guess, they are the two that immediately jump out.
Inspiring examples. They're absolutely brilliant, motivation from both of them. This is deep, very deep. I'm curious, what does the future look like for you? I know you have your plans and your ambitions. What can you share with us?
That's $1 million question. I think the future looks like going back to what I've just said about really having a passion and being completely lit up by something. I suspect at some point in my future I will do some work in and around addiction, because it personally is a big part of who I am. And I don't know in what way, and I don't know how, but if anybody works in this field and is listening and wants to have a conversation, I'm absolutely up for that. So I would like to explore buying businesses, because I haven't done that yet, and maybe knitting some of these businesses together and seeing how that plays out. I've done some investing, some with some success, some with less. But for me, I think the learning is a massive part of how I operate. I'm very interested at the minute in learning around kind of buying businesses and that whole side of the market, which is new to me. So I suspect those things will play part of my future, and I fancy living and working in a warmer climate because this weather in the UK is just a shocker, Ricardo. So
I feel you.
I think that we're going to have a little adventure in Spain next year for 3 months, and we'll see. I just think the nature of the work that I'm doing now, I can work from anywhere, and so I have a massive love affair with London, so I won't be leaving it for too long. But I do think it's good to have those experiences as well. From a cultural perspective, I've lived abroad a number of times before, and I'd like to do a bit more of.
Interesting. I want to touch upon a subject that I can feel you have a lot to tell about, which is mental health and making sure that as an entrepreneur, as someone building their business, they keep their mental health in check. Now, you've been on a massive journey, a lot of transformation. What have been I guess the key lessons, but also the guiding principles in this massive journey you've been on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, understanding really who you are as an individual is super important, and it's easy to not do that. And we're in a world of massive distraction, and so it's very easy to be hugely distracted. I think having a support network from a mental health perspective, and that can be lots of different things for different people. For me personally, I journal, and I find that quite a therapeutic way to get out whatever is sort of sitting in me, I guess. And I have an act of doing a gratitude list every day of 10 things that I'm grateful for. And it takes less than 5 minutes, but what it does is it puts my mind into a positive mindset at the start of the day, thinking about what I'm grateful for. And it's not about grand things like, there's a Ferrari in the drive. I mean, there actually isn't. But it's not about that. It's about perspective and being grateful for, I don't know, good coffee, good run in the morning. And so I think those things for me are important and get more and more important the older I get. Or the better connected I get, however you look at that. I also think being able to have conversations about mental health and how people are feeling. We often joke at the Grafter with the internal team, and actually sometimes with clients, because a lot of team meetings go into like a therapy. It almost feels like a group therapy session, because we do talk about everything and have created a culture where it is completely acceptable for people to have those conversations and encouraged. And I think, these jobs as founders, they're lonely, they're hard. So having a network and being able to ask for some help, and I think that's probably the key bit, is not thinking you've got to struggle with everything yourself, and asking for help, or just saying, I don't know how to do this. Can I get some help with it? I've got a friend who does work in addiction, sort of, and he is launching a business at the minute, and he said to me the other day, I cannot believe the amount of support that I've got from people by just asking for help. Yeah, it's an untapped skill in many people, I think. Being humble and saying, can you help me out?
It's one of the hardest things, isn't it, as an entrepreneur, because you don't want to be seen as weak, but at the same time, you actually do need a lot of help. And being able to ask for help, it's getting into the mindset, saying, you know what, I don't have this nailed down. Let me ask for help, and just getting some directions. That's a hard pill to swallow, but then when you start taking it, you think, oh wow, this is amazing. I can actually get a
I
lot of
think
stuff
it's
done.
incredible. And a lot of people, Ricardo, are, in my experience, people will always help if they can. I mean, if you were to I don't know, asking for something crazy. You know, you're messaging Richard Branson and saying, I want some first class tickets somewhere. You know, I suspect the answer's probably going to be no. I mean, I may be wrong. But I think people in the main are quite generous with their time. You know, we set something up at the Grafter called Bootstrapper Hour, and we run it. It's a LinkedIn Live once a month. We run it for early stage founders. So they've got a place to come, they have a community, they can rock up and they can ask whatever they want. And we've had all manner of topics and conversations around businesses, mental health, you know, how do I explore tax, to setting up a limited company, to side hustles, to you name it. And I think being able to plug into some of these is super important, because it does start to help the next you know, generation of entrepreneurs coming through. Yeah, I would always recommend that. And for me personally, you know, I'm lucky I have a wide network of people that I will ask for help in lots of different capacities.
I was just thinking about something you mentioned, because I also have the same thing, which is ADHD, right? And ADHD, one of the good things and bad things about it is you are able to juggle multiple things at the same time and feel completely at ease and no stress whatsoever. However, if someone asks you to hyper focus on a specific task, you just think, oh wow, this is incredibly boring. I need to do something else at the same time. But I also think, as you know, as a CEO, as a leader, as a founder, this is actually one of the best skills to have, because you can juggle multiple things at the same time. Now, how impactful has this been in your own life and in your own journey?
So I think for me, the ADHD, I suspected that I was prior to being diagnosed, and I suspected it from a complete lack of appreciation for authority from much younger years, and just being a little bit questionable with activities growing up, and you know, just sort of pushing the boundaries, I think is probably the best way of phrasing it, Ricardo. And so I guess for me, you've described exactly the sort of flavour of ADHD I am. I can run loads of things concurrently. Hyperfocus is a bit of a challenge, and if someone sends me a form to fill in, I'd rather fall through a closed window. It puts the fear of God in me. Like if you have to do a visa application or something, I'm like, oh, I feel ill. But I'd also I would delay that stuff forever and a day, because it's, you know, it fits in the category like going to the supermarket for a weekly shop, i.e. never going to happen. I'm just not wired that way, and I accept that. And I think the other thing for me is I'm lucky I've had a PA support me for a long period of time who is very au fait with ADHD founders, and I think by recognising some of that stuff that bores me is much better handled by other people. To make sure it actually is done is key. It's funny, I mean, this thing's like bouncing around my head, so I'm going to say it. But my partner has always said to me, you know, Rach, why don't you have carrier bags in the boot of the car when you go to the supermarket? I said at the point I put a carrier bag in my boot of my car, I'm going to kill myself. Slight exaggeration, but I said that sort of planning ahead rates a bit like a list for me, and none of that stuff. It just makes me feel uncomfortable, that level of planning. But I think as a founder, I think it's a superpower. I do think that, and I noticed me do it earlier today, you know, I can go right off on a mad one, down a rabbit hole, something piques my interest, and that's what business buying has piqued my interest a few months ago, and I cannot consume enough. And I know that, you know, if it's not a podcast, it's a book, and there's probably two books a week getting read. I mean, it's crazy, but it is who I am. So I kind of embrace it and accept it, and I manage it. I don't know whether I manage it better or it calms down a bit when you get older. I can still feel it in me sometimes. You know, when you're hyper wired and kind of really hyperactive. I actually had that this morning, and so yeah, I just had to go for a long run and try to balance it out.
How important do you think exercise is in the founder's journey?
Essential. But that's for my journey. So for me personally, I mean, I guess transformation started with me personally. I was probably 7 stone heavier, maybe 10 years ago, maybe 15 years now. So, and then I kind of stopped drinking, and took, up exercise, and it's good for my mental health. My head is very, very busy. I've mentioned ADHD and addiction, so it's not quiet up there. I wish it was, Ricardo, at certain times, but it's very rarely quiet. So being able to do activities that take me out of my mind, like I do Muay Thai, do martial arts, run, do some weightlifting, but also like meditation, slowing down is actually very important for me because everything goes a million miles an hour. So being able to slow down is definitely a work in progress, but it's a handy skill to have.
As we're reaching the end of the podcast, I wanted to ask you advice that I think a lot of our listeners would like to listen to, which is can you share some pearls of wisdom, that you've learned from your own journey and you like to tell people starting out?
Yeah, of course. I think pearls of wisdom, for sure. Cash flow is king or queen. However you feel comfortable with that. For any entrepreneur, if you're not managing cash into the business, there is going to be a fundamental problem pretty quickly. It's the most basic advice imaginable, but for me, I think it's probably the most critical. I think the other bit is for entrepreneurs, it's an important question to ask yourself. Are you creating a job for yourself, or are you actually creating a company? Because a lot of us dive in and build something that we love doing. But is that building a job, or is it building a company? And I guess you didn't ask for 3, but I'm going to give you 3. My final piece of advice is always be learning, and be open to that, because for me this world is moving really quickly. And we can't be complacent. I run a consultancy at the minute, and every article I'm reading is telling me that AI is going to replace my consultancy in 5 minutes. I don't think it will. But if we learn to, understand what's going on in the market, I think it puts us, ahead of some of the technological advances, but also allows us to, bring personality and human nature to some of those, and so for me, learning is absolutely key.
Rachel, if people want to reach out to you, how can you do so?
So thegrafter.com is the company website, and I am on LinkedIn more frequently than I should be. So Rachel Murphy on LinkedIn, and recently debating whether I should be back on Twitter, but I don't want to start a big fanfare of debate around that. So yeah, that's where people would find me.
Yeah, lovely. Rachel, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed it.
My pleasure, Ricardo. Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you. All right.